Hi, everybody. My name's Bob Phillips, and I'm an author, clinician, and composer at Alfred Music. And I'm so excited to be here with one of Alfred's incredible string composers and arrangers and clinicians, Jim Palmer. Jim Palmer was the recipient of the ASTA Elizabeth A.H. Green Award for Distinguished Teaching. That's a big accomplishment. It's a national award, and you have to be the best of the best to get that one. It's particularly meaningful to me because Elizabeth Green was my teacher at the University of Michigan, so I know how valuable that honor is. Jim has also served as an Alfred music editor, as well as arranger and clinician, and a professional violist, and he's a fantastic high school and youth orchestra director. So Jim, thanks for joining us today, and I'm just going to jump right in and start with a question. You ready?
I'm ready. It's great to see you, Bob.
Good to see you too. So Jim, we've all had influences in our life. We've had mentors, we've had various people. In your life, who is your most influential music teacher? And more importantly, why? What did they do that made them so special to you?
Bob, that's a great question. And I think back to my high school orchestra director. His name was Mark Thielen, and he teaches in Lakeland, Florida. He taught there for over 30 years, and he's a director of the Imperial Symphony now. And when I was coming along, both of my parents were PE teachers. So they really didn't want me going into music. They wanted me to go into sports. And Mark had a really good influence on me and was really honest with me and helped encourage me to pursue my musical desires. And when I was in high school, I was just so influenced by his passion for music and his musicianship that I knew I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And so, with his encouragement and a little nudge here and there, he got me started off on the right way. So, I really owe my beginnings of my music career to Mark Thielen. And as an editor and arranger, Bob, I'm going to credit you for that one. I really didn't realize that I had those skills inside me until you had started encouraging that about 10 years ago through our relationship that we had in ASTA. And I've just been so inspired by your teaching and by your writing, and haven't had an opportunity ever to tell you that, but you are right up there as one of my biggest inspirations to my musical writing career as well.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's easy when you have really talented and dedicated person like yourself. It's not too hard. So Jim, when you arrange or compose a new piece and you get started, we all have a different process as educational writers. Some of us have a lot of background in composition. Some of us have no background in composition. Um, but the thing that most of us have in common is, of course, a love for kids. And we've probably done some teaching or a lot of teaching. So when you start arranging a piece or composing a new piece, tell us about your process. How do you get started? What do you do? And how does that work for you?
Well, the first thing, I think a lot and I listen a lot. And when I'm wanting to arrange something and I come across a piece of music that I think would work really well for kids, it's got to have a great tune. It's got to have a great melody. That's where it starts. And then when I find a piece like that, whether it's an arrangement of a Bach chorale or a Mozart sinfonia or a folk tune, when I find something like that that I really like, and have to ask myself the question is this a piece that students are going to love to play? And then if the answer to that is yes, then the second question for me is, okay, so what level of student is gonna want to play this piece? And when I hone in on that level, I decide the third and most important thing is, how is this going to help them become a better musician? So I really start with just a great tune. I try to get it to the level of what I'm writing for. And then I fuss with it. I may take the melody and do a straight harmony with it. And then on the second time I go back to the melody, I might move it down into the violas or into the cellos or up through the seconds. And then I I fuss a little bit with the harmony and I try some different things and try to find some fresh ideas. And then as I work through it, I constantly, because I'm still teaching, I constantly think, is this something my students are going to really like to play? Is this something they're going to enjoy playing? And at the end of the day, what did they learn? So for me, it kind of morphed from all of those edits and little arrangements and rewrites that I did all through my career for my students. And now, as I write for the next generation of students, I'm constantly thinking what's going to help them become better and what's going to be fun for them to play.
So what I hear you saying is that, the process is very organic from you because it it really comes out of your daily work with kids. And I imagine that this is what you just described is not so dissimilar a process for how you choose repertoire for your students. Would that be accurate? How do you choose repertoire?
Well, the very most important thing for me when choosing repertoire, either for my high school or my youth orchestra, or if I'm doing an honors group, is it going to be the correct level for their skills? So I look at the piece and I see the techniques that are required for the piece of music that they're going to play, the experience that the students are going to have, and then it's got to be really interesting musically, whether that's a classical version of a piece or whether it's a folk tune or something for my fiddle group. It's got to be really interesting to the students. And I'm big on you push the students in the beginning of the year with providing them with a lot of opportunities to develop their technique through the repertoire. But when they go on stage, the very most important thing that they have to answer the question yes to, do they sound good? So I want to make sure that the pieces that I pick for my orchestra not only address their next level of technique, but they've got to sound good. And I think it's so important in picking repertoire that we pick pieces that are appropriate for the level of the group that we're performing with.
So the your focus on the students and the performance leads me to think um, your goal really is ultimately when you write a piece is probably the same thing, right? You want them to sound good. So do you craft the piece with that in mind, thinking that, wow, how can I make the violas in an average, regular high school orchestra sound good, so on and so forth, or the seconds, or the cellos, or basses, or first, whatever it is? Is that kind of your approach?
Bob, that's a great point and a great question because I really, at the end of the day, when the performance is over, I want the parents or the audience to comment on how beautifully their kids played, and I want them to sound really great. And for me, being a viola player and an arranger, I really hear those inner voices strongly. Those are like yelling at me when I'm arranging. And I always want those middle voices to be rich and full. And I want all of the students to have an opportunity to play something that's, if it's not the melody, that it's interesting. So that's the sound for me is very important, that it has this rich, full sound, no matter the level of the group that's playing the piece.
That whole issue of making sure it's interesting for all the parts, certainly that's something that resonates with me also in my writing. And do you think that your experience growing up as a violist and mine as a bass player strongly influences that in terms of trying to make, really great parts for those of us that are not first violins?
Well, you're the and I'm the papa, right?
That's
I
right.
mean, that's that's where we've lived our lives as musicians and
That's
orchestras
right.
a lot in the professional repertoire. A lot of that is what happens to the basses and the inner voices. And I don't want that viola player or that second violin player. I don't want them to end their high school career with just being an accompaniment. I don't want that bass player to go all the way through high school just playing the ground and the harm and the tonality of the piece. I want them to find their voice too on their instrument. Because as you know, as a bass player, one of the most beautiful sounds you can ever hear is a really artistic bass player. When you have that, that is like the best sound in the world. Same with viola. So I think that's what for both you and me, I think that's what's driven us to make sure that at the end of a composition, everyone's gotten a really good opportunity to find their voice and express themselves through their instrument.
Yeah, I think that's obviously a really, really important point, and particularly an important point for young composers is to remember that you're writing for kids. You're not writing for professionals, and so that it's an educational piece. It's something that teachers need to be able to teach from and have great content for all people in the room. So, Jim, reflecting back on your life in music, what was your most important memory from your school music program, or maybe your college music program too, university? What are the things that really strike you?
I think from my high school, when I was a high school musician, I have a memory that stands out really, really, really strong to me. And it was our senior year at our state competition. It was called Festival. So it was just for ratings. We weren't competing against anyone. And we were doing the Barber Adagio for strings. And we had worked so hard on that piece. I mean, it was just weeks and weeks and sectionals and we were ready. We were ready. And I can remember sitting on the stage of Manatee Community College. We had taken a bus ride down there for that day. It was a long day. And we started the beginning of that piece. And when the first violins came in on their B flat, and to me as a 12th grader, it sounded perfectly in tune. And I knew that we were going to nail it. And at the end of that performance, with the big climax in the middle and then the beautiful ending that just sort of fades away, I can just remember sitting on stage with my very, very best friends in the world. That circle of friends of mine, I was in their weddings later in life. They were in mine. I can remember that that was going to be the last serious performance that we had. And I wanted to create those memories. I wanted to repeat them all throughout my life. And I that memory sticks out, and I share that with my students because making music as a high school musician, as a high school music teacher, the music is absolutely important, but the relationships that we build with our students, that is just as important as the music. And that moment really resonates for me in a very strong way.
Yeah, the affective part is the part. It's why we teach, right?
That's
And
exactly right.
well, I have my counter to that is that we were working on Adagio one time with my high school orchestra, and we were just before the performance, and we dress rehearsal, and we were in the room still, and we just got to the last chord, hit the last chord, did the release, and the fire alarm went off.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
there
Oh,
wasn't a
that's
kid in the room that
terrible.
didn't jump out of their chair. I mean, it wasn't the
Wow.
way to end Barbara Adagio.
No.
So Jim, I think an interesting question for a lot of teachers right now, because of COVID and because of the extreme stress that people are under. It's stressful enough being a high school or middle school or elementary, um, you know, string teacher, but then you have to do it in a whole new way, learn a whole different set of technology, and it changes day by day. So it's been stressful for sure for everybody. Although people are doing really great work. I'm so impressed with what everybody's doing. But it brings up a question that a lot of mid-career teachers ask. And since you're an experienced teacher and have managed to do this, how do you manage your work-life balance so you can stay fired up about teaching and do your best work, but also have a home life and have a life for yourself?
Well, I think it's really important. I've been married now for 30 years and I have two grown children.
Congrats.
And I think for me, when I walk home and I'm able to try to turn the switch off so that I'm not really thinking about what happened during the day, I share my experiences with my wife and we have a nice meal together. But what I really like to do is I really like to invest my time in things, my downtime in things that have nothing to do with music. I love to sit on the deck with my wife and just watch the birds. I grill a lot. I love to do that. And the best time for me is I usually take 2 or 3 weeks in the summer where I don't do anything related at all to music. And we go to New England and we camp up there for a 10 days of those 2 weeks. And during that time, I take my mandolin with me because I love to play and that's therapeutic for me. I'm not very good, but I just love hacking away at it. And I think just finding things that you can invest in that you love, things you love to do, whether it's jogging, whether it's just hanging out, sometimes just sitting on the couch, but you've got to turn that switch off and leave it at work. And then that way you'll be refreshed for the next day because these days are long. We're having a really long days these days, but my advice would be to find an interest, a hobby, or your family, and just have a time in the day where you say, enough is enough with the business. It's time now to just invest in the things in life that I love.
Well, I have kind of one last question for you. You've certainly had a very successful, a long and very successful and varied career. Um, so, what advice do you have for younger people that are starting out, or maybe the first 5, 6, 7 years? What do you think some of the secrets to your success have been? What are some of the principles that you would encourage them to think about in terms of successful career in music education, and one that they can actually, do for 30 years or 35 years?
I like I like to think that music teachers are artists. That's what we are. And we have a blank canvas every single day. And when we walk into the classroom, our art takes on two forms. The first, obviously, is the art of music. And I think to make it through the long haul, you have to be passionate about that. For me, it's been maintaining my skills as a viola player and being able to play in a string quartet and at my church at a high level at the highest level I can play for all of these years. That's been very important to me. And so that part of an artist is to share that art form with your students and remember that it's a big picture for them. It's not that daily rehearsal. It's the little tiny things that you do over a long period of time to help them love music. And then the second part of being an artist is that the kids are the blank palette. They're the canvas every day when they walk in. And as an artist, you're going to paint their lives. You're going to help them make good decisions. You're going to model right and wrong. You're going to give them encouragement so that they can be successful human beings. And hopefully, when they walk across the stage at graduation, they will love music and they will have learned great life lessons from your classroom and also from you. And then as you go through your career, all of those little encounters that you're going to have of former students is what charges you up. And the majority, let's not be dishonest with ourselves. The majority of those kids are not going to be professional musicians. They're going to be lawyers, waiters, doctors. They're going to be a variety of things. And the joy that I've gotten over the years of seeing my students grow and have wonderful lives has been a real factor in keeping me in the profession. And I feel like I'm still a long way from being done because I just love it so much.
Well, Jim, you have been a real blessing to your students. And I know that having been in your classroom before and see what a dynamic and great place it is, you've had a tremendous impact in the music world, both in Florida and Georgia, and then of course doing all states and clinics, and then now in your career as an arranger and writer. So thank you for all that, and I just want to thank you for talking with us today. And for those of you out there that might be unfamiliar with Jim's arrangements or compositions, I strongly encourage you to go search online for Jim Palmer, and you'll find some terrific things there to check out and play with your orchestras. So thanks for being here today, Jim. It was really great to have you. And I'll see you somewhere soon once we can get back out on the road.
Bob, it's been a great time with you today. It's always great seeing you. We have such a good time when we get an opportunity to hang like this.
Yeah,
Thanks for asking me some great questions today.
thank you.